Hello, dear friends. The topic of today's lecture is the nervous system and the neuron. Now let's begin with the introduction to nervous system. Nervous system is the master controlling and communicating system of the body. It controls and coordinates all essential functions of the human body. It enables our body to respond and adapt to changes both inside and outside the body. You can see in this block diagram that nervous system can be classified as central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Further, the central nervous system comprises of the brain and the spinal cord. You can see in this figure, it is locating the brain and the spinal cord. Then, the peripheral nervous system constitutes different nerves. Now, as we have seen that the central nervous system, which comprises of brain and the spinal cord, they act as the integrating and command centers of the nervous system. Central nervous system, which is generally abbreviated as CNS, it receives different sensations, interprets and dictates motor responses for the purpose of controlling the various tissues, organs and organ systems of the body. Now let's look at a simple illustration. What happens when you suddenly touch any hot surface or hot object? You will immediately pull your hand back. Do you really think this process is as simple as it looks? No, the answer is absolutely no. It includes the signals from the sensory receptors to go to the central nervous system. Here we are taking spinal cord. And then the central nervous system interprets that signal and finally respond to the motor neurons by telling that we have to put our hand back. So this process simply represents a kind of example for the nervous system. By this example, we can define the main functions of the nervous system. So, nervous system collects the sensory input from the body and the external environment. Then it processes and interprets the collected or the received input. And finally, it responds appropriately to that corresponding input. Now, moving over to the next part of the nervous system, which was the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system constitutes different nerves that extend from brain and the spinal cord. Now, what is a nerve? Nerves is a bundle of neuron fibers that are found outside the central nervous system. They link all parts of the body by carrying impulses from the sensory receptors to the central nervous system and from the central nervous system to the appropriate organs and muscles of the body or in the body. Now, the nerves can be classified as spinal nerves and the cranial nerves. Spinal nerves are those which carry information to and from the spinal cord. On the other side, if we talk about cranial nerves, they carry information to and from the brain. Now, on the basis of function, we can further subdivide peripheral nervous system into the sensory or efferent division and motor or efferent divisions. On the basis of that whether it brings information to the central nervous system or it takes information out from the central nervous system. So it can be sensory or efferent divisions and motor or efferent division. Now, sensory division basically consists of nerve fibers that convey impulses from the sensory receptors located in various parts of the body to the central nervous system. On this other side, if we talk about motor division, that is, which carries impulses from the central nervous system to different organs, muscles, and glands in the body. Now, depending upon the information which neurons, basically motor division, is carrying from the central nervous system, whether that is voluntary control by us, means we are consciously controlling that signals, or it is out of our control, like blinking of the eye, beating of the heart. Those are involuntary kind of responses which are not under our control. So motor division can be classified as the somatic or voluntary nervous system and autonomic or involuntary nervous system. So we can define the somatic nervous system as which controls the voluntary movement. It allows us to control skeletal muscles. Also, it is responsible for receiving and processing sensory input from the skin, muscles, joints, eyes, tongue, nose, and ears. Next, if we talk about autonomic nervous system, they control involuntary responses. They carry impulses from the central nervous system to glands, various smooth muscles, cardiac muscle, and various other membranes. Further, we can classify this autonomic nervous system as the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system. Both parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, or we can say sympathetic and parasympathetic division, that is which we don't have any control because both are under involuntary type of systems, but they are different from each other. Now let's see how they are different from each other. Sympathetic nervous system, it prepares our body system during exciting, emergency, or stressful situations. It is more active during exercise. Therefore, it is also termed as fight or flight kind of response. Now, if we talk about parasympathetic nervous system, it is active when our body is at rest, or we can say under normal conditions. It conserves energy. Therefore, it is also sometimes referred to as eat and sleep type of response. Now, let's have a brief recap on the different, we can say, divisions of nervous system or organization of the nervous system. So, as we have seen that nervous system is classified into two, that is central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system further constitutes the brain and the spinal cord. On the other side, peripheral nervous system have two further divisions, sensory division and motor division. On the other hand, now motor division can be further subdivided as the voluntary, that is somatic nervous system, or the involuntary, that is autonomic nervous system. And finally, the autonomic nervous system is further divided into sympathetic or the parasympathetic type of nervous system. So this was the complete organization of the nervous system. Now let's move over to the next part, that is neuron. Now what is neuron? What is the structure of neuron and how it is useful? What is the main function of neuron in our body? So neuron is the basic functional unit of the nervous system. They are over 1 billion in a human body. They are the communication cells that receive, intimate, and transmits the information. Neurons come in variety of shapes and sizes. Now, let's study about the typical structure of the neuron. So first is the cell body. You can see in the diagram, it is shown cell body. Now, it is the main processing center of the cell, and also it is known as the headquarter of the neuron. Now, next part is the nucleus. It controls the activity of the cell. Further, we have dendrites, which are the thin branching extensions of the cell body, as we can see in the figure, that receive signals from other neurons and the sensory cells. Then we have axon, which is a branch which conducts nerve impulses away from the cell body to the other neurons. Next, we have myelin sheath. It protects and insulates the nerve fiber. Then we have nodes of Renwier. It allows nerve impulses to move along the neuron through depolarization and repolarization of the nerve membrane. This process of depolarization and repolarization we'll discuss in the coming lectures. Now we have axon terminal. They receive electrical signals from the axon and release neurotransmitters into the synapse. Now let's see what are neurotransmitters and what is the synapse. So you can see in the diagram that neurotransmitters basically they are the chemicals that convey information to the target cells. And where that process occurs, it is a synapse. So that is a junction between the two neurons where one neuron alters the electrical and chemical activity of the another neuron. It occurs between the axon terminal of one neuron and the dendrite, or we can say the cell body of the second neuron. So this was the complete structure of the neuron. Now let's see what are the main types of neurons. So we have three different types of neurons: sensory neurons, motor neurons, and the interneurons. Now let's see how they are different from each other. Sensory neurons, they have long dendrites, short axon, and they carry messages from the sensory receptors to the central nervous system. Then we have motor neurons. They have long axon, short dendrites, and they transmit messages from the central nervous system to the muscles or glands. Then we have interneurons. They are also having short axon, but they are found only in the central nervous system where they connect various other neurons. So this was all in this lecture. In next lecture we will discuss about the communication among neurons. How do neurons communicate in our body? How they can transmit information from one section of the body to the other, or we can say how one neuron can give information to the other neuron, and that brings the information in the nervous system. So this was all in this lecture. Thank you.